We're now going to focus on the local implementation, and the next important part is SEND IASS, which explains itself to you. And we have Marianne Lewis here, who was the old PPS, who's now, I don't know what we call her, Mrs. SEND IASS, I suppose. But is a fountain of knowledge and youth for us all on this side. So any question you have, just ask Marianne, I think. But anyway, here's Marianne then.
There's a clicker. Right. Fantastic presentation from Daisy. And what we'll be doing is we will actually be repeating a lot of what she's said, but giving it a local flavour and explaining how now that's going to work in practice. So to start off with, our credentials. What do we have? What's our experience to be an information, advice and support service? Well, first of all, at least one member from every service has to go through the IPSIA legal training, which is equivalent to the solicitor's CPD training within this very specific area. And actually, at the moment, we've got 2 members of our team who've passed that. Equally, all members of the team must have completed the independent supporter training, which is a different training, but has equally been compiled by a barrister. It's similar kind of legal training, but more of the focus on purely the education, health and care plans, whereas the IPSIA legal training goes right and covers all of the areas. We're getting there. We don't know all the new law yet. We've done the education part. Some of the health and care stuff we're still ongoing training at the moment. So what we offer. Obviously, we're offering free, impartial information, advice and support on special educational needs and disability for young people, children, parents and carers. And also, we're quite happy to speak to interested professionals if it falls into their remit and it's something that they would like to ask us about. So we're covering education, health and social care, although don't ask us loads of health and social care questions at the moment. National and local policy, kind of got our head a little bit more around that. The local offer, and we're here to be able to support people to access and navigate the local offer, because I think the local offer is something that should be really good, but you've got to know how to use it, you've got to understand how reasonable it is, what you can access through it, and with new things, that's not always so easy. Your rights and choices. That's the bit that generally we're most strong on. That's the bit that I get with all my training, all about rights and choices. Opportunities to participate, and obviously with our collaborative working agreement with the Parents Participation Forum, what we tend to do is we divvy things up. So we don't actually do, say, like newsletters or anything like that. That goes out through the forum, and we encourage people to join the forum, but we will do joined up working where it seems appropriate. Where you can find extra help and advice. So that may be Health Watch, it may be through other organisations, it may be disability specific, and how you can access that support. Sometimes they'll be through a website, sometimes that may be that you might want an introduction to somebody, or you might need somebody to make a phone call for you. We also do individual support. And obviously that's because although we've got the information on the website, we've got information leaflets, or we've got one at the moment, but the rest are being produced, some people are going to need much more specific individual support. So this could include things like talking through your worries and concerns with you, helping you understand letters, reports, and processes that can be quite complicated. And I know that some of the jargon that's written in some of the reports around is It's quite mind-boggling. We can help assisting you write letters or complete forms. Equally, that's not always the easiest task. Supporting you to prepare for and attend meetings. There will only be certain people that will be able to do that because of the capacity. Guiding you throughout the processes. And as Daisy explained earlier, we're not purely restricted to all the educational things. So it would be assessments, admissions, exclusions, complaints and appeals. But that may be to do with education, health and social care, once we've got our head around it. Providing you with an independent supporter. Now, this is a new programme. It's time limited to help with the transition from statements to education healthcare plans. And that's why I spoke about the training before. It is very specifically focused only on the assessments and plans. And if we're not able to, we'll do our best to find someone else who can, some other information, link you in with another professional. What we mean by impartial, because I think that's another one that's quite tricky. The code says that the information and advice and support should be partial and provided at arm's length from the local authority and the clinical commissioning groups. The local authority have the statutory duty to make sure that the service is provided. So you can't cut them out altogether. There has to be some relationship. What's important, though, is that we're basing most of our stuff firmly within the law, which is impartial. It just is. We're not one side or the other. So we're totally unbiased. We don't give priority to any particular groups of people, any particular disabilities, any different age ranges. And so we're just able to be there and to provide the best service we can to everybody. And quite often that may be a little bit devil's advocate with people in explaining what their rights and what their possible decisions might be. So the difference between Parent Partnership Service and the Information Advice and Support Service, which I thought was quite important because Parent Partnership Service has been around for a while and some people have got their head around what that, or have just about got their head around what that was supposed to do, and now we've changed. As far as the branding, which is part of, this also links into our national quality standards for the new services. So a different logo, but we've kept some of the same so that it doesn't completely throw you. Independence from the local authority. One of the issues before, I think, was that there were only 2 members of staff within the Parent Partnership Service, and both were directly employed by the local authority, which for some people didn't feel very comfortable. Although they were employed to be impartial, not everybody sees it that way. So the way that we've done it now is that there's only 1 member directly employed by the local authority, and that's me. All the rest of the team are employed through a hosting arrangement that we have with Torbay Community Development Trust. So it's actually physically moving us out of that close proximity with the local authority. The service users, obviously before it was only parents and carers, and now we've got to do children and young people as well. Not quite sure how that's going to work, and I'm actually up in London at the National Children's Bureau on Thursday this week to start learning about providing information, advice and support for children and young people. Age range, that's gone up to 25, and I think quite interestingly, although we were 0 to 19 before, that was only predominantly whilst they were in a special school, because it was whilst the statements were in place, and we had very little dealing with the learning disability assessments and colleges. Now, obviously, with the age range going up to 25, we will have more involvement with those young people, which is another steep learning curve. And obviously the sector subjects that we cover are no longer just education, it's now education, health and social care. So the structure of the new service. At the moment, I mean, every new service within the minimum standards should have a steering group. At the moment, we know that we need that to be more robust. So currently, we are using the Parents Participation Forum steering group as a proxy steering group for the service, which does actually mean that they've been fully involved in how this has developed up till now. But I'm aware that that needs to be wider, maybe needs to have some professionals guiding us as well. And we'd be very, very interested to hear your views about who should be involved in that, if there are any people here that would be interested in doing that. I mean, the steering for the service should only take up 3 meetings a year, to be honest. We've got me with overall responsibility for the service at the moment. And then we have 3 SEND support and administration workers. Those are posts that are kind of shared between SENDIASS and the Independent Supporter Project and the Parent Participation Forum, because we have the capacity there to be able to inbuild some administration time for the forum, which was very cost effective for them. And so that really works well in this working together and cooperative nature. And then alongside that, trying to develop more independent supporter volunteers and more generalised SENDIASS volunteers. We have got Carol over there who spoke earlier. She is a fully trained independent supporter volunteer. We've got several others in training at the moment. So now I would like to hand over to my staff who will be running through the rest of the programme with you. And I should be on hand to step in if they're at all uncomfortable. But we have Kelly, who is working predominantly in Torquay. She'll be up to speak in a minute. We have Alex, who's predominantly working in Paynton, and she will be up to speak in a minute. And Diane, who's predominantly working in Brixham. And I'm aware that you're not presenting because you've had to do a lot of out of front of house today. So Diane, if you'd like to just stand up and give people a wave so that they can put a face. Lovely. Okay, Kelly.
Okay, so this is just how you find us and the information that we're going to be providing you with. Now, we do provide drop-in centres. So there's one of us based in Torquay, which is me, which is just behind McDonald's in the CTT building. Big green building, you can't miss it. No windows though, so I can't see out. So you have to come in. Alex will be in Paynton, and Diane is in Brixham. Now, we all work on different days. They should stay the same, predominantly throughout the times, but they will be on our website if we're not going to be there for one day for any reason. You can always email us, and one of us will email you back as soon as we can. We do have a website. Please go and look at it, because Marianne did a fantastic job on the website, and she's always updating it. Phone us at any point, and the phone will be diverted to our mobiles on different days. So you will get different ones of us, but as much as possible, the same one will call you back when we can. Now, leaflets, we do only have one. It is out the front, so please take it as you go. But we're hoping, well, we will soon, have a complete range of leaflets, as the Parent Partnership Service used to have, and they will just give you further information on different sections. Social media. Now, most people use social media, so we will too. But it is, do you think most of you would access our information through social media? Whether it be Twitter, yeah? That is something easy, accessible, up-to-date information. That's fine. So we will be having that in the next few weeks. Fingers crossed. I'm guessing that's going to fall to me, so give me time. There we go. This is Alex.
Hello, everybody. Well, on top of everything else that we can do on a day-to-day basis for you, we can also provide ongoing training for you in respect of perhaps where you feel you would like to know more so that you are the best support to your child or your young person. So, for example, effective communication. It might be that you feel uncomfortable speaking on the phone, sending emails, writing letters, filling out forms, something like that. If you feel that you have any issues and you'd like us to arrange something, again, contact us. And the same goes for working with schools, where you're having to talk to people perhaps about the assessment process, your reviews coming up, that sort of thing. Again, it's how to talk in a positive way to people in schools to help you get the best outcome for your child or young person. Again, increasing knowledge of SEND law, like you've sat here today and you've had a whole load of information chucked at you. I'm sure you feel quite daunted by it all, but this is ongoing, so please pick up the phone. Ask us if perhaps a group of you get together and want to know a bit more about perhaps how to complete an EHC plan. That would be an example of something we could do in that aspect. Preparing for meetings. The assessment process will culminate in a meeting where all professionals, including parents and young people, if appropriate, would attend. So again, that's quite a daunting process. We can help you with that, actually go through the processes and let you know what to expect, and which will make you more confident on the actual day itself. Challenging, again, you may well get a result that you are not happy with and the outcome is not satisfactory. We can go through the ways that you would actually be able to challenge that. And again, it's trying to do it in a positive way, through mediation, ideally. That's something that we can offer, and we'll go through that, in more depth if you wish to have a specialist training event set up about mediation and appeals. And again, Marianne touched upon it, volunteering. We are going to need more people like Carol and indeed Marianne, who was doing it before, to actually go out there and actually support parents. If you need somebody at a meeting with you, help you fill out a form, something like that. So again, it's volunteering opportunities, and if people volunteer, we will be providing training to those people to enable them to do their job. Okay? Anything else you want? I'm sure you can think, and as we grow with this is all new to us, including yourselves. We may well come across other aspects that are sidetracked from law, for example. If you think of anything other than what we've just discussed here, just let us know, and we're happy to provide something tailor-made for you once you've identified your needs and where you'd like your your knowledge gaps actually filled in. That's something we can do for you too. Okay? Now, the principles of the new law, I know that Daisy went through it very, very thoroughly. The key bit that overrides and underpins the whole of the Act is Section 19, and that is the wishes and the feelings of both yourselves as parents and your child or your young person. That is absolutely paramount. And in doing so, it's early identification. Early intervention is vital to actually providing adequate provision, not just adequate provision, but actually the best provision as the law prescribes. This is, again, the new element of this is this integrated care plan, whereby there is this cooperation between multi-agencies, which obviously include educational care and the health aspect. So it is that kind of integration so that the best possible outcome and provision for your child is actually there in your plan. As a result of that, we need to make sure that your children are getting the best quality of education, and it's actually specifying those needs that will go into the plan, and any additional needs and resources that are required for your child to help him or her attain the best possible outcome has to be provided. So it has to be high quality throughout. And again, A focus on inclusive practice. Again, we're looking at mainstream schooling here, where a lot of SEN provision is already provided in school, but wherever necessary, that extra support will be brought in, and it is an inclusive practice. Moving on to that, from 14, it is essential that every child is prepared for adulthood, and this is reflected in the EHC plan. So we would be looking at transitioning and preparing for adult with a view for them going onto post-16 as well. So it's taken into account. Again, it goes back to the early intervention and identifying needs as soon as possible, anticipating their needs almost.
This is me. So this is a range of this is all the information we can provide you with. Obviously, we can provide you with a lot more than just this, but these are the areas that I would say we're probably most confident on. So we've got the local offer. So someone is going to talk to you about that in more detail, how the local offer is set out. But if you need any further after this, you can always come to us and we'll talk you through everything and guide you through the process. We can support you through from SA and SA Plus to SEN Support. So it's pretty much the same, but there are some differences in the practice and how that is going to work. It's more child-centred, so it should be really good. From statement to EHC plan, we can see you right from the beginning of that to the end of the process. We can see you from when you first get your letter, or even before that. If you want your child to maybe have that assessment, or to see if they can get assessment, we can help you right from that very start of that to the end. Post-16, so this is a new part of it. So when they go from ordinary secondary school into extra, so college or any other provision that takes post-16, we can see you through that process and try and help you find where you think is best for your child and where your young person feels best themselves. Personal budgets. Now, I think that's going to be a big one for everyone, but there is going to be someone that's going to come and talk to you more in depth about personal budgets. But where possible, we'll do our best to help you with those too.
I'm here to tell you a bit about where Torbay's local offer is available to be viewed by all of you. We have a directory that we maintain online called Torbay Directory. My service is called the Family Information Service, and we manage the information within the directory. So it was already in existence before the SEND reforms came about, and therefore the local offer. And it was decided that a lot of the information that's to be included in the local offer already existed within the directory, and it was in a format that people could access and could be used quite readily and added to and changed as we needed it to be. So it was decided that that was a good place to start with our local offer. And we developed a new section within our directory to provide the information. So the homepage of our directory looks like this. Hopefully some of you will have at least seen it, even if you haven't used it. I recommend having a look because there's a lot of information on the directory and a lot of people don't really know that it exists because we have very little money for marketing. So our section that we maintain is the family bit, and that's really information that's relevant to any family in Torbay. And the definition is now with children aged 0 to 25. So that includes all kinds of things like local childcare provision, advice and support services, activities and leisure, sports clubs and things like that. And a wealth of other information. Also national information, so if there isn't a service that can help you locally, or if there's one that can help you locally and nationally, we'll have them both on there. So that includes national charities and any helplines, advice and support services that we think might be relevant to people within Torbay. We also have an arrangement with Devon Council where we can exchange records, so we can show some of their records and they can show some of ours. Which is really helpful because it helps those people who live on the borders of the authority or who use provision that's outside of our authority area, because it is quite a small area. So the local offer itself is kept within this family section. The community section and the wellbeing section, they are mainly for adults, so your community is any social groups and advice and information services that adults can use. And Your Wellbeing contains all of our adult social care services, and that's maintained by the Disability Information Service in Paignton. What you might find is that a lot of the information that's useful when your child is preparing for adulthood can be found within the wellbeing section, because that really is where the bulk of the information for adults with a disability is kept. We've also got Your Events, which is an events calendar showing you what kinds of things are coming up, different fun days and one-off events, but also regular things like scout clubs and brownie groups and sports clubs and things like that. So when you go within the family section, we've set up this part of it called the local offer. And within that, we keep all our information that's relevant to anybody who needs to look at that type of thing. It's also spread about in other places in the directory, so if you're just browsing in general, you'll probably come across something that's quite useful. So if I was to click on that, you can see that we have a bit of information here. This gets updated and changed as it needs to be. We also have links to related services that are relevant, and also to other websites that we think might be useful for people using the local offer. And up here we've divided our information further into different categories, because there's such a lot of it that it needs to be split up really, so that we can, so it makes it easier to search. And the information can be searched by keywords or location. So if you're looking for something around a particular postcode, you can put that in. And if you're looking for something that's around a particular something quite specific, so maybe a service for someone with ADHD, you could put that into the keyword and it'll bring up anything connected to that. We also have developed this preparing for adulthood section, which goes some way to coping with the crossover from children's services to adult services. Also, we signpost from that section to what's in the wellbeing section, because there's quite a lot of detailed information on there for adults. But we've tried to make it as useful as possible for young people making that transition. So if we were to go within a certain section, if you look at the education section, I've used this as an example because that is where we've got a lot of information back from schools in the form of their SEN reports, or local offers as we've called them on here. And it enables you to search for schools in Torbay, and then you'll be able to see an attachment on the school or childcare record to be able to see what they offer specifically to children with SEN and disabilities. So if I was to search within that section of childcare, it would bring me up a list of available childcare in Torbay. Again, it can be searched by postcode, so that's quite helpful. This symbol here just indicates that we do have that extra information attached. It doesn't do anything, it's not a button, it's just purely just so that you know if you were to click into that record by clicking on the name, then you'd be able to see more detailed information about what they can offer to children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. These filters down the left-hand side help to narrow down the information further so that you can search by town or what they might offer to a particular age group or a particular time of day. Sometimes cost is included as well there, but it depends which section you're searching. So if I was to click within a record, it shows a bit more information about what the provision offers. Up here in the useful downloads is where you'll find a PDF leaflet that covers all of the statutory information that we were required to collect from each setting, which includes things like how is it funded and what specifically they offer to children and young people with SEN and disabilities. Also shows what time they're open, what the age range is that they provide for, and there's a link to their website if they have one, and their email and contact details. Also, there's usually a map to show where you can find them as well. Any services that you're interested in can be added to a shortlist by clicking on the little orange plus sign. Once they've been added to a shortlist, the shortlist can be emailed to somebody or printed out, which is quite helpful, and it saves us having to print out a whole load of information from the directory. We can be quite specific. If people give us a call and ask us for information, we can then add it to a shortlist and email it to them or post it to them, which is quite helpful. And you can do that yourselves as well. Yeah, and that covers it. If you have any questions or you want to chat further about the local offer, how it works, how to find it, we do have a stand with some laptops that are connected to the internet, so you can have a go for yourselves, and we'll be there till the end of the event. So, thank you.
Moving from School Action Plus to SEN Support. Obviously, this is a transition phase at the moment, and they should have all moved from School Action Plus to SEN Support by September 2015. A lot of schools locally are already moving children over, and I guess it could be an area where there's a little bit of confusion, because parents maybe have only just got their head around School Action Plus, and now it's going to be something completely different. But within school SEN Support, it should be exactly the same as what you've been led to expect beforehand. There will be a special learning programme for your child, most likely. They can get extra help in exactly the same way as they did before by teachers or learning support assistants. They can be making or changing materials and equipment, working with small groups of children, not only with children one-to-one. They might be observing your child, keeping some records, adapting things, helping them take part in the everyday class activities, and under the Equalities Act and everything else, no child should be excluded. And making sure that your child has understood things, so maybe encouraging them to ask questions, try something new. That is all what you would expect within SEN Support. That is what we would expect any mainstream school to be able to provide without the need for a plan. Helping other children. That's a really good way as well of mainstream schools encouraging children. Children like helping other children, and it's not necessarily a bad thing if your child isn't receiving individual support from a learning support assistant, but that maybe they're being supported by their peers, because that makes them feel big part of a bigger community, and it doesn't make them stand out so much as being different. The other thing that schools should be able to do, and not all of them are as keen on this as others, is supporting your child with physical or personal care. That is something that is expected at SEN Support. Obviously, there are levels within that, and if it was a huge amount of care, if it was tube feeding or something like that, obviously you'd expect a plan. But on a minor level, schools should be able to manage that. How are they going to do it then? So we've moved away from the School Action Plus, we've moved away from the IEPs. What can you expect in the new system? So it's the assess, plan, do, review cycle, where the assessment, teachers should be assessing children. They will be assessing children all the time. It's one of the things that they do, whether they have additional needs or not. And the important thing here is the fact that the Code of Practice says that schools should take seriously any concerns raised by a parent. So if you go into your school and say, I have this concern, they shouldn't just sweep it under the carpet. They should at least take it seriously, consider whether or not they need to assess, maybe do some observations, share some of what they're doing with you. If then they say, okay, we've assessed, we do need to take some action, then they would have to plan that action. And we would expect them to plan that action with you, not plan it themselves and show it you later. It is your right to be involved in those discussions about the plan. Doing it. Having a plan's a great thing. Doesn't work unless you do it. So the next thing they would be doing is putting it into practice and making sure that everybody's aware of what we're trying to achieve through this. So having done the assessment and the plan and then getting on with it, all right, they may not have a piece of paper that says it's an IEP, but they should know what their outcomes are. They should know what they're trying to achieve. And so should you as a parent. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to review it. How are you going to know you've got somewhere if you didn't know where you were going? And this is a continual cycle. So unless it was something really, really simple that was assessed, planned, done, reviewed, fixed, you would expect that to continue all the way along. And they have to keep records of it as well. So that may look like an IEP, it may look like something different, it may be a paper format. You will still have access to records. The only thing that I would say is that when Daisy said within the code it says that parents need to meet with school 3 times a year. I have a little bit of an alarm bell about that, in that it doesn't specify how that meeting should happen. And schools already have parents' evenings 3 times a year. And we want to make sure that, yes, it could be run alongside a parents' evening, but we don't want to miss your opportunities to keep involved. So, education, health and care plans, just recapping here. They came in 1st of September this year. And they've replaced all new assessments, all new statutory assessments. And there won't be any new learning difficulty assessments either. So any new requests for assessment after September the 14th would have to be for education and healthcare plans. All young people who will need to continue to receive the support through a learning difficulty assessment, so in post-STIC 16, from September 16 should have an education healthcare plan by September 16. So if your young person has a learning difficulty assessment now and they're due to finish their education by summer, they won't need an education healthcare plan. It's only if they are going to continue within education after September 2016. There's a national timetable for conversions from statements to education healthcare plans, as Daisy mentioned, and also local ones. And the local transitioning has to be completed by April 2018. And we will show you a little bit more about the transitions in a minute. She says, no, I'll carry on with this bit. So, what effect does this have on statements? So your child has a statement at the moment. The law has changed. What kind of ground are you on? None. Immediately none. Statements still remain as statements. All the same entitlements. They're still legally enforceable documents. And they will continue to operate under the Education Act 1996, under the old law. The confusing bit here, I guess, is that the new law has come in, but because there's this 4-year transition period, we now have 2 laws running in parallel. So the entirety of anybody who's still on a statement, same rules apply as they always did before, exactly the same rules in relation to annual reviews, the same times, the same expectation as far as some kind of records like an IEP or something similar to that under the old law, and the same rights to tribunal. So if your child wasn't in the transition phase now and had an annual review and you weren't happy, you asked for an amendment, and for some reason that couldn't be agreed, you would have the same rights to tribunal as you have had previously. Talking about the transition then. The local transition plan, and this is just an excerpt just to show you that it does really exist and it is published. There is more, and that's just a snapshot, but you can see even for this year, some have already moved over. The year 5s from last year, so that they're the ones that will be going into secondary for next September. Those have all been drafted and converted. The year 9s are the next ones being looked at. The year 11s have to be done because they're that must group. The others of these are the priority groups, and the post-16s. But we will mention a little bit about learning disability assessments and post-16 shortly. So the information about the local transition plan can be found on the local authority's SEND Reforms webpage. And there are links to that from the Parents Participation Forum website. What is particularly new is the introduction of local authority education health care coordinators. And we've got a couple along here to tell you what they do. This is Lorraine and Hannah, and they are two of a team of education healthcare coordinators employed by the local authority, and they shall tell you what they do.
Lovely. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us. What we hope to be able to do is talk you through a little bit of local context in terms of what Daisy said earlier and what that means that we're doing locally in Torbay. It was really nice to hear, actually, that Daisy mentioned she had heard some good feedback about Torbay. And as has already been mentioned, these reforms came into force on the 1st of September of this year. But prior to that, there was a lot of work getting ready to set the scene and come on board with these new reforms. Some local authorities across England were lucky enough to be picked for pathfinders. So which that meant they got extra funding from central government to prepare nicely and settled and all singing and all dancing. Torbay, unfortunately, weren't a pathfinder. But I think what's important to point out is that we worked alongside the DFE to prepare the draft plan of an education, health and care plan. And it's been amended based on the consultations we had with them. And we're really pleased to say that it's been ratified by them. And in particular, our personal budget section has been identified as an example of good practice, which they wish to share with other authorities. So that's good. The Education, Health and Care Plan coordinators we are a group of 3. So my name's Lorraine, this is Hannah Spencer, and we have another colleague who's not here today, who's called Mandy Aston. Combined, our backgrounds are from the Portage Service, Children's Disability Team, Early Intervention and Safeguarding, and also Careers. Our job is time-bound, and we have 2 main roles. One is to address new requests for statutory assessments, and 2, to support the conversion process. Excuse me. So in terms of requests for statutory assessments, we will receive a request into the SEN office within Torbay Council, which usually comes in a great big ginormous folder full of health reports, education reports, parental contributions, evidence of what schools have been doing for the last 2 terms to support a child under SEN support, and evidence to say that what the impact of this, whether it's been good or there's been no improvement. So once we have that information, it's the EHCP coordinator's role to summarise that information and present it to the Special Educational Needs and Disability Panel, which happens every Wednesday, every week. Prior to the panel, we will telephone parents and families to advise them that we have got their information, and to arrange a time that's convenient and a place of their choosing to come out and meet with them, to give them the feedback from the panel. And as I'm sure you can appreciate, that sometimes that can be quite sensitive, because either way we're feedbacking either a yes or a no. So we like to do that face to face. We like to be able to explain the rationale of why the panel came to the decision that it did. And we take with us the evidence that the panel have written down from their meeting, and we share that with parents. Also at the home visit, we appreciate the importance of the SEND IAS service, and that it has a crucial role to play in supporting children, because we are statutory, we do represent the local authority, and it's important for us to advocate that service to parents. So that's something that we also do at the home visit, to make sure you're aware that the service, including Marianne and our staff, are there to help you and give you that independent advice. The second part that I wanted to explain to you a little bit was the conversions. As it's already been stated, we have until April 2018 to convert all the current statements which we have, of which there is roughly in the region of just over 900. Okay, so we split that into 3 years and have identified 300 each year, and that's recorded within our transition plan, which has just been referred to and is on the torbay.gov.uk website. So our plan is published there. We will use the information which has been provided by the school and recorded in the annual review document. So whether it's a normal annual review or whether it's a transition annual review, we would use that to convert the current statement into an education, health and care plan. My colleague Hannah is going to tell you a little bit more about the actual education, health and care plans, what they look like, and what it means to sort of use it, because you will be more aware, I guess, of what a statement looks like, and it's bold type and it goes into this section and long-term objectives, etc. The plan is much more user-friendly. So what we'd like to do is just talk you through that. We will be around over lunch. If you'd like to come and ask any questions at all, we'd be happy to answer them then. Okay?
Okay, so we're going to have a quick look at what the EHC plan looks like. You will get a copy of this in the pack that you get at the end, so don't panic too much about not being able to see it all. This was devised by a task group initially for the draft plan with health, education, social care staff, the PPF, and also the West of England School. The final draft was evaluated by the pupils at Mayfield, Coombe Pafford, Paynton Sports Academy, the PPF workshop, Disability Council, and it was initially drawn together by the SEN team. It was then signed off by a multi-agency steering group, which was chaired by Richard Williams. It's come a long way since it was first devised. Basically, from an EHC coordinator's perspective, the quality of this document and the end result of that depends on the information that we're given to write the plan. We can't make things up. We can't say that this child has this, that, or the other. We don't have that knowledge. The people that are feeding into this plan have the knowledge about this young person. You as parents have the knowledge about this young person. And unless it's a new plan, the parents will generally have seen all of the information that we receive. So when it's a conversion, it shouldn't be a surprise to parents. It's information through the reviews, it's information through the educational psychologist report that you'd have already seen. So you shouldn't be any surprises in there, and if they are, we like to liaise with parents on what that could be. So that's the front cover there. Generally what we ask is for a picture of the young person at that point in time to be given for the front of it. It just makes it a little bit more personalised. The beginning is all about the child and the basic information. Then we go on to the people that have contributed to the EHC plan and all of the people involved generally in the review and gathering the information. We go on then, quite central to the focus of the plan is the family and the young person themselves. We start with talking about the child, talking about who they are, their home environment, their family, going on to then that central focus of the aspirations for the young person and also the aspirations that the parents have for that young person. We also talk about how they've participated to the development of the plan. This isn't something that's being done to them. We are trying as much as we can to get young people involved in the process. That leads on quite nicely to the next part, which is generally, this has just got one on it, so it's a child-friendly profile. There's 3 different versions which we can use with different levels of ability. If a child is not able to complete this, then we would get those that work with them very, very closely, family, all to contribute to making a child-friendly profile for the young person. And then we would not say things that make me happy, we would say things that make Fred happy, for example. There's 3 different versions. They have got different symbols on them to look at the level of the child and their needs. And generally, they've been really helpful in us understanding the young person and what they want to contribute to their plan. It is sometimes about Girls Aloud, though. So moving on from that, we go to this one here. Now, all of these boxes really expand, so that looks like quite a basic level of information, but basically as we write, they get larger and larger, and sometimes this bit here, which is the current strengths and needs of the child, is massive, so it could span 4 or 5 pages, depending on the child. There is a big, big focus in the EHC plans about the strengths of the young person, the strengths of the child, which we didn't find too much in the statements previously. It's very much focused on what can this child do, what can this young person do, and focusing on that really actually helps you write it, because you can look at long-term outcomes that are actually achievable because the young person is interested in this field. So within the needs, we would talk about the needs of the child. For example, in social, emotional, mental health, that used to be called behaviour, but that's now incorporated in why the behaviour occurs. The needs may be that the child has low self-esteem and think quite badly of themselves. Then, for example, the long-term outcome would be for Fred to have increased confidence and self-esteem. Another example may be in sensory and physical. The needs may be that the child has diabetes and needs insulin injections. A long-term outcome might be that that child could manage that himself within the setting. Then, this is the support plan for the child. Again, these boxes expand rapidly when you're writing one. So a desired outcome is your long-term plan. Then this is what the child needs to support him or her, would be what we're expecting the provision to be. Okay, so what is that school, what is that setting, college going to do to be able to enable that outcome to be met? And that's identified in that box. It's then identified how often this will happen. Generally, the school will already have told us that information within their reviews. You know, we're going to do literacy daily. It will be for 1 hour. We'll specify all of that in there. And who will carry out the support within the setting. We're on to personal budgets now, but I'm not going to steal Matt's thunder. He's next, so we'll skip that bit. Monitoring the plan differs between child to child, so we would monitor at a level that was appropriate for that child, and that section of the plan differs quite a lot. Then we have the major transition points for each child. Again, these differ, but we generally will fill that in, and then it is given to parents initially. Once the plan's written, they'll be consulted, they'll look through the plan, and then they will feed back to us. They might make a phone call, it might be a visit, and they may say that actually recently we've had a change in a level of cognition that's happened at school, or they've achieved a new target, and therefore that might change within the period that you're writing the plan, the 20 weeks. And so we can change that before it's finalised. We're obviously consulting quite a lot with parents on their child's plan. And that's really it.
Can I just
Go on.
see if Is it on? It's on. I'm on. Hello. I just wanted to add a little bit about the 20 weeks process, because obviously when the decision is made by the when we receive the request in, that is our starting date. The date that we stamp it in the office, the clock is ticking for us really in terms of reaching that end result. And we have 20 weeks, and the writing of this plan occurs roughly between weeks 9, 10 and 11, okay? So halfway through that process, we would have gathered all the information that we need from all the professionals and the support staff engaged with the child or young person's plan, and we will have formed a draft of this plan that you see up here, and then it goes out for consultation. It then comes back, and the resources and any allocations are ratified by the panel, the SEND panel, it was originally agreed to assess, and then the final plan is published. And all of that happens within, 20 weeks. And just to clarify, which I missed earlier on, was that the panel is a multi-agency panel and is represented by the SEN head of service. It's represented by practice managers within social care, managers from adult services, health and educational psychology, and also Marianne sits on the panel as well. I don't think I've missed anyone, have I? That's everyone. So it very is much a multi-agency approach. It looks at making sure that the 3 areas of education, health and care are represented so that an informed decision can be made for that child based on the information that's being presented to the panel. Okay. We'll definitely be around at lunchtime if you want to ask any questions.
I mentioned to you earlier about independent supporters and this being a new sort of time-limited incentive. So just to further expand on that, it is purely focused on those conversions from statements or learning disability assessments to the new education healthcare plans, which is why it's a time-limited project, because that will have all happened within the next few years. What you could expect from an independent supporter. So that's understanding the process of new assessment requests and of conversions, helping you to understand the local offer. Do you know what? You're going to get sick of the local offer, because we're just going to go local offer, local offer, local offer. You know, I'm looking for this. Have you looked in the local offer? How they can do this. It can be a consistent person that you can talk to throughout the assessment and planning process. Now, I know that the EHC coordinators will be a consistent person, but for some people, they might just want to check it out with somebody else. They might want another perspective. And some parents may want to take it around several different people. They might want to hear what they've got. The coordinator said they might want to go and check it out with the school. They might want to go and check it out with family and relatives. They might want to drop in and speak to somebody through the service, give us a call, send something electronically. We can help you gather your information for the plan. As the coordinators have already said, they can't make it up. They are bound by receiving information. Now, they will consult and they will get reports back, but there may be information that you have that nobody else has sent in. So there may be some information that you want to gather yourselves. Providing you with information on personal budgets. And we're in the very early stages of that, because I think personal budgets is kind of entirely new territory, which hopefully will be explained a bit more. Although, I would say, when the notion of personal budgets first came out through the Green Paper, and then it was sort of brought out that it was going to be in the Children and Families Act. I think there was a general feeling among parents that it would be much more fluid, that they would be able to take money and buy their own speech and language therapists, and they would be able to send their children to private school and have a top-up, and all of that is not true. It's not quite as flexible as I think some parents maybe had thought it might have been in the first place. As we said before, if there's a bulk purchasing, there are bits that can't be dished out. So, and Matt will fill us in. Fill us in on a little bit there. We can help you writing your contribution to the plan, and that kind of feeds into gathering your information. We can help you check that everything that's in the draft plan is what you expected it to be and what the law says it should be. And we can discuss with you the options regarding what school do you name in it. Is where they are at the moment the best place? If they had that additional support, would that work better? Now you've had your plan, does that open options to other specialist places? What kinds of questions might you want to ask about those? So we can go through that with you. And again, signposting. If there's anything that we don't know, if there's anywhere that you need to know or need information from, we can signpost you on. The other thing that's really important to mention before we go into personal budgets is we've mentioned about statements turning into education healthcare plans. What about learning disability assessments? What effect does it have on them at the moment? Again, none immediately. They still remain under the old existing framework. They will remain in place until September 2016. Because if you remember previously, you only need a plan if you're going to be in education after 2016, September 2016. So for a lot of young people that you may have now, it may never be an issue. They may not need to transfer. Although, September 2016, they will cease. So you will need to have a plan then if you're going to be staying in education or training from then onwards. Young people with SEN, oh, this is again, yes. If they're staying in the education and training after September 2016, they need to consider applying for an education healthcare plan. Okay? They may not need it. They may have made progress, they may have settled down into secondary education, and they may not need that additional extra. But if they are planning on staying in education after that, you need to think early about whether or not an application needs to go in, bearing in mind you've got a 20-week window in which it has to be written, you've got to have thought about where you want them to be, and all of that. So moving from learning disability assessments to education healthcare plans, statements traditionally end when a child leaves school. And that would mostly be at 16, but if they were in a specialist school, that might be 19. In the old system, the learning disability assessment, which is not totally old because it's still going to be existing for another 18 months, was written for young people who had most likely had a statement, didn't necessarily only apply to them, and for children who were likely to need additional support as part of their further education or training. Similarly to a statement, it identifies the needs, it looks at the provision and thinks about the outcomes. The important thing to be aware of is, unlike with statements of SEN, conversions of LDAs will not happen magically, or they will not be timetabled in. To get a learning disability assessment converted to an education healthcare plan, the young person will have to apply for it. or their parents on their behalf. So I think it's really important for any of you. Yes, you may have young people in that situation. They may have finished by then. It may not be an issue. Maybe it's going to take them longer to get through their courses. Maybe you're going to have to think about it, and to remember that that is not going to automatically happen in a conversion process.
Just to add to what Marianne was saying a bit earlier about personal budgets, yes, the original thought was that it would be a lot more flexible, and initially it probably won't be, but I think it's important to say that our aspiration is, in the long term, to make them as flexible as possible for families. So that's what we need to work with parents and young people to achieve. Just to introduce myself, my name's Matt Gifford. I'm the SEND Reforms Project Manager. What that means is I've spent the last 12 months working with Dorothy Hadley, Peggy Seddon and the SEN team in Torbay to manage and coordinate all of the work which has needed to be put in place ready for the September reforms coming in. And obviously, as you can imagine, we've had to work with lots of different groups, parents, young people, health, social care, staff, community and voluntary sector people. Loads of people have been involved in those preparations. Today I'm here to talk to you about our approach to personal budgets within Torbay, specifically education. And I'm pleased to say that I don't think, but I'm sure you'll let me know, that we contradict anything that Daisy said earlier, but let's find out. Approach to personal budgets in education. Where would you go as a parent or a young person if you want to find out more? That's really what I want to address today. Just to go back a step, personal budget is a sum of money which is allocated based on an assessment of a child or a young person's needs. Within Torbay, we've got a lot of experience of personal budgets in the form of direct payments, which are provided by the disability team, child health, who work in conjunction with the disability team, and also adult services have been running personal budgets for a number of years. The consequence of this is that professionals have a lot of experience of the type of services that could be regularly used and successfully used with a direct payment or a personal budget. So therefore, we feel a lot more confident about working with families and young people and you know, advising on where that is. The benefits of a direct payment, for example, or who delivers the support, what type of support family choose, when and where they provide it. It's about flexibility and choice and control, but obviously always linked into the child's assessed needs. So a range of service providers are known to us within Torbay, within the existing personal budget setup. Personal budgets in education are new. I think Daisy mentioned this herself. There hasn't been a great deal of information coming down nationally, which has been useful for us to guide us in our local preparation. So what we're doing is we're taking it, our policy is very much an open door policy. We will discuss with parents on an individual basis. If you want to know more about how you could access a personal budget or what your options are, what funding would be available to you, encourage you to speak to Dorothy Hadley within the SEN team, or Rob Butler, who's also somebody with a lot of experience of direct payments, to discuss your individual situations. What that would mean is they would be looking at your specific circumstances, what your child or young person's assessed needs are and what your particular needs are. They'd start looking at what options are open to you. Let me just catch my place. It would involve an open and transparent discussion of the funding that is allocated to meet your child or young person's needs. I mean, this happens at the moment in the form of an activity-led funding formula. That's going to continue. And what we're looking at, the funding which would most likely, the funding that we're talking about is what's called Element 3 funding. Funding which is paid to schools on top of their notional SEN budget. So this figure is calculated by a formula, and this would be shared with the parents or the young person. That is something which would be up for discussion with the caveats that Daisy mentioned earlier. But additionally, if you look at the Code of Practice and Advice which is out there, it is possible, with the consent of the head teacher and the governing body, that schools may well agree, they may not, but it is possible that they will agree to release some of their notional SEN budget. But there's obviously a lot of blocks and barriers to that at the moment, and I think that ties in very much with commissioning and how services are commissioned. So that's the bit at the beginning that we've got to change. So if there is a big block contract in place and it means we can't release funding, at the moment that makes it difficult to take funding out of a service and say that there you are, you can go and arrange your own support. So we've got to address that. So we're doing that by working with organisations like Healthwatch, the PPF, and trying to see where we can tie in with the people who make the decisions about commissioning within health, social care and education. So we're already looking at setting up group, well, we have 2 proposals, I believe. Where's Sarah? I can't see her, but we've got 2 routes possibly for commissioning feedback gathered from parents, etc., to feed into, which possibly could also be linked in with the Health and Wellbeing Board. But this is the thing we're trying to tease out at the moment, because obviously each individual service has their own decision-making process for how budgets are set, what time of year they're set, that sort of thing. But as discussed, there are services which won't have those sort of barriers, and transport was a great example, and that's something that we're looking at. So what we're saying is, let's work together. Let's do our best. The SEN team want to work with families to make personal budgets a success in Torbay. The team's taken an individual approach to develop this and uncover effective alternative solutions to meeting a young person's needs in partnership with parents and young people. So obviously, as we develop services, as we discover good practice, we need to share this information with parents, with families, with young people. We need to make it available on the local offer. We don't have any cast iron rules in place. What we do have are some guidelines. We have an individual approach, as I've mentioned already, and this is what we've taken from our experience within adult services, within the disability team. What applies to family A may not apply to family B. It's about looking at individual circumstances and individual needs. So that's where we're saying, give us a call. We're happy to discuss it with you. There's very few blanket rules that can be applied. Personal budgets can't be used to pay for private school education. We think we're pretty safe with that one. Decisions around taking funding out of a setting should not be at the detriment to the majority. So, and even that one, we're not certain we can say that in every case, but what we're saying is, if, for example, a school has funding and they use it to fund, for example, a teaching assistant who provides service to meet the needs of a number of children, if you took that money out to fund individual children, they could no longer service a whole group of children. Or if we're not 100% that that's the case, but that is our guideline. That's the advice we've had, so we're working towards that. Obviously, what we need to do is clarify this information for yourselves and for ourselves as soon as possible. So really what I'm saying is, let's have an open discussion. If you want to find out more about how you access personal budgets, you want to see what options are open to yourselves, please get in contact with us in the SEN team, Rob Butler or Dorothy Hadley, and I'm happy to take any inquiries. My name's Matthew Gifford. Please just give us a call or drop us an email, and we can either set up a phone call or a face-to-face meeting to talk through your individual circumstances. And the way we see it developing over the next 12 months, our experience will guide how the service develops and the information that we can give to you. So I hope that's not too woolly. It's pretty much in line with what Daisy said, I think. So I'm going to be around over lunch. If you've got any questions, or if you want to come and set up a meeting or a phone call or anything like that, come and find me. I should be around the Family Information Service desk. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Quality assurance. Back to SENDIASS, back to familiar territory. So in addition to the internal checks that we have to do conforming to the national service standards, which is kind of where we came in, we want to know that we're providing the service you want. We've been involved with the Parent Forum throughout this little transition period, looking, putting the workers within the community, offering the drop-ins, but we need to know if we're doing it right. And we also need to check on the quality. And certainly through the Independent Supporter Service, nationally there is a survey which actually went online yesterday to be able to check work that any families have with anybody providing the independent supporter role about the EHC plan, information, advice and support. And so that doesn't feed back to individual services, that goes direct to the Department for Education. We'll get to know later. So we value your feedback. It's the only way we can find out whether we're doing it right. It's your information, advice and support service, really. You are the customers. So please let us know. And that's the end of that one.